Hi everyone, this is Serverless Camp Week 2, Step 1 by Bit Project. My name is Emily, and in this video, we're going to be going over how to use the Face API from the Cognitive Services by Microsoft. So let's get started. If you look over here, the introduction, it immediately talks about how because of APIs, you don't have to learn how to code every single little bitty thing in an application you're building. Usually you can always find some API or application programming interface that can help you complete a task so that you don't have to code something all over again. Typically in software development, it's all about reusing codes to make your life easier. So APIs are one way to do that. All right, so let's get started. In this project, we're going to be building an API and a web page to return you a GIF when you upload a picture of yourself. And in order to do that, the first step is to play around with the API that allows you to upload a picture and return an emotion. So we're starting with a very basic step, and that's going to be working with the API. So the first thing we want to do is create a Face API endpoint. Now you should already have an Azure account, so I'm going to go head over to my Azure account. I'm already signed in. I'm going to click create a resource. If you just type in Face, it should come up. All right, so you have the first one, and I'm just going to click create. Have it here. All my settings are correct. You're going to click free. I'm going to call it Emily's Face API. Let's see. And then I'm going to review and create. Oh, forgot my resource group. Now resource groups, once again, you can literally put anything. As you can see here, I have so many different ones. I would suggest you use the same resource group for every single project in this serverless camp you're going through. I just picked a random one, but let's go ahead and get it done. Now it passed the validation, and it's going to deploy. Now it's going to take a second to deploy this, so I'm just going to pause the video when it's done. We'll be right back. All right, so now that our Face API resource is done and deployed, let's go ahead and click Go to Resource. Okay, now let's go back to the instructions to check out what we have to do. So once we've created it, now we want to create a post request in Postman to the Face API to retrieve the emotion attributes of this image. Let me go ahead and open this image. Nice. Okay, let me go ahead and save that. I'm going to save it in a place where I can find it. So I'm just going to put in downloads. All right, downloaded that image. Okay, now here comes the part where we're actually going to work with the API. So previously we've done some work with the CAT API where you learned about how to make a GET request. In this case, we're going to be making a POST request. Now you might be wondering what the difference is. So let me go ahead and change. First, let's go ahead and change the GET option to POST. So let's say you're in a restaurant and you're getting your order taken. If you make a GET request, you're giving the waiter your order. You're saying, this is what I want. And the waiter goes to the restaurant and then comes back with your order. That would be a GET request. You're sending the API what you want, and the API gives you back what you wanted. Now for the POST request, you're typically sending something to be manipulated. For example, let's say you wanted to sign into a web page. If you sign into a web page, typically you're posting information. You're giving the API information. For example, from the last example, you're making a GET request because you're just saying, I want to get a cat image. In this case, we want to be posting an image. We're sending an entire image to the API to get some information back. So this wouldn't be like simply asking a waiter for an order because we're giving it the API a whole picture. So in this case, it would be a POST request. All right, let's keep on going. So now that we have our POST request set up in Postman, we want to fill in some details because right now there's no options. We want to access the Face API keys, and I'll show you how to do that and what they're used for. We're also going to look at the documentation. And right here, it's called the API reference. I'm going to open that in a new tab. So if you look here, the next section we're going to talk about is API documentation. Documentation is basically just instructions for how to work with something, how to work with an API. And for this case, it's teaching us how to work with the Face API. It's going to teach us how to get the information we want from the image that we post as an HTTP request. So I'm going to scroll all the way down there. Right now, okay, right here is important. It's telling us what the request URL is. It's saying that we're going to have this. This whole section is the URL right here. Anything after that, those are all optional parameters that you can add. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this because this is kind of like the template for our starting point. I'm going to go over here and put it in the request URL. Now, if you see this thing here, this is the endpoint, and this is the endpoint to your resource that we just created in Azure. And what an endpoint means is that it's just like somewhere to access something. So if I say, this is the endpoint to my API, I'm basically saying, this is the address you can access my API at. So we can go ahead and go to our Azure and figure out what our endpoint is. Okay, so right here you can see my endpoint. I'm just going to copy that. I'm going to head back to Postman, and I'm going to go ahead and just like replace this right here, copy paste it. And this is going to be kind of like the fundamental, the basic structure of my post request. And now I'm going to add more stuff on top of it, because if I just give the API this, it doesn't have an image, first of all, and second of all, it doesn't know what I want. So that's what we're going to do with headers and body and parameters. And we're going to go over what all of those are. So let me go back here. If you look back at the instructions, it tells us that we are expected to retrieve the emotion attributes. So let's start with parameters. Parameters are basically a way to pass in additional options or settings into an API. Like let's say you're like a coding function. A function in coding or programming could have parameters. You're passing options into it that the program can work with. So we're going to do the same thing. I'm going to go back to the documentation, and if you look here, request parameters, that's exactly what we want. And if I scroll down here, I see emotion. Okay, so we see that the parameter is going to be called return face attributes, and it accepts a string value. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this and go back to Postman. I'm on parameters. Key is the name of the parameter, and value is what you're inputting as the parameter. So in this case, we want emotion, and we saw that from the documentation that you can set this parameter name equal to whatever you wanted. For example, emotion is a face attribute. All right, so now that we have the parameters, how about let's head on to headers. Now you might be wondering what headers are. Headers are, it's not typically not specific to an API. For example, if you see like content length, connection, accept encoding, they're just general settings that can be used for any API. Parameters, on the other hand, these are specific. Like if you go to the CAT API, you're not going to be using return face attributes as a parameter. Okay, so now you might be wondering, what headers are we going to use? If we scroll down here, you'll see it tells you, it says request headers. First thing you need is a content type. Second thing you need is an OCP APIM subscription key. Basically what this is it's kind of like a password that lets you get into the API, because you don't want anyone using your API. It can cost you money, and it can be dangerous. Your account can get stolen. So here's another thing: never share your subscription keys with anyone. For the purpose of this video, I'm revealing them, but once again, don't do this ever. All right, so I guess let's go with content type first. Now, content type is basically telling the API what you're going to be sending it. In this case, we're going to be sending the API binary data. So we're going to be sending something called octet stream data, which is basically, you can just say it's binary data. And you can see down here, I think right here, we're going to be setting it to application/octet stream. This specifies a binary file. And I'll show you that how we're going to send a binary file in the body section right after the headers. So the next item is going to be key. If we look at our key in here, we have to name the header OCP, this whole long thing that I'm going to copy paste. And to get the key, all we have to do is go to Azure. It's right here. Click key 1, copied, and I'm going to paste it right here. Awesome. So now we're done with our headers. Now the last part is the body. When you get to the body, remember we're sending a binary file. The basis of all of the internet, any computerized thing is binary. And that's how we're going to be sending our file. So you're going to go ahead and click select file. I'm going to go to downloads, click the image, open it up. Don't worry if you have the caution symbol. As long as you have Postman Desktop downloaded, it shouldn't be a problem. All right, let's go ahead and see if this works. So I'm going to go ahead and click send. Awesome. So now we got some output, and it gives us our motion, and I believe it does look exactly like the example that we saw in the file. So before we head on to the next step, I'm going to quickly go over the contents of this post request once more time. So here we have our endpoint, which was Emily's Face API. We got this from the documentation. Here we have our parameters. It's telling the API that we want the motion face attribute. For the headers, we're telling the API what kind of image we're sending. We're sending binary data, and whether or not, and we're proving that we can access this resource and it is ours. So that's what the subscription key is for. We got that from Azure. For the body, we send it in a binary format because we're sending it as a binary file. It is an image. And once again, to reiterate, this is a post request because we're posting something in the body. Notice that last time when we did a GET request, we didn't have a body in the request, but this time we do because it is a post request. Awesome. Now I'm just going to copy this over so that I can put it in my file over here. All right. So we've created the Face API endpoint. We've created a post request. And I'm just going to paste this here for safekeeping while we do the last step. Okay, so this was my output from Postman. And then the last thing we need to do is place the API endpoint and subscription key in the GitHub repository secrets. API endpoint and subscription key. This is for your reference later, and it's also so that we can test that your API endpoint actually works. Never put any kind of secrets out in the open. You're always going to want to create environmental variables and never hard code them, because if you commit them to GitHub, everyone's going to be able to see them. And that's dangerous. Okay, let's see. Let me go back to Azure, and I'm going to get our API endpoint. To add this to our secrets, if you already know how to do this, you can go ahead and just skip. Go to secrets, new repository secret. I'm going to paste this here. It was called API endpoint. Okay, that's my first one. Adding. And then we also want to add the subscription key. This one especially, do not reveal this one. If it does get exposed on Azure, you have the option to regenerate them. See right here, regenerate key 1, regenerate key 2. That way it prevents you from them getting stolen, even if they accidentally got exposed. Okay, so now that we've done that, let's see here. We've done that, and let's go ahead and comment the output of our Postman request to finally move on. All right, the counselor bot has closed our issue. And we should be able to see the next step popping up. So that's it for this video. It was all about making an API request and working with the Face API. We did this with Postman, but next time we're going to do it programmatically with code. So see you guys next time for the next video. Bye!